Toji checked the envelope that arrived at her office that evening via express post. Inside were documents on Senri, the Blessed Congregation's predecessor. The sender had been one Shugo Takashiro, which, much like her, had been a player in that case. It seemed he'd been gathering information of his own on them after the case was closed. Some of the documents were fairly recent, too. Senri had been dissolved in February of 1951. More specifically, on that day when their compound in Ueno burned to the ground, the ones taking advantage of them had died, a day engraved deep in Toji's mind. The loss of their headquarters and leadership had spelled the end for Senri, on paper anyway. But in reality, their so-called leader had survived, as had many of their believers. What? Oh, their current leader, right? Is that what you're talking about? Because I'm pretty sure their leader at the time got riddled full of holes. Said leader had been taken... Oh, right, got taken into custody. Right, he was going to get he was going to kill Shugo, but then Yaginuma shot the gun out of his hand and just arrested him. Right. Okay, interesting. However, the rest of the faithful had moved to the new, or perhaps old, shelter that was the Blessed Congregation, created by Tokihiro Oribe. Shugo's documents spoke about that as well. Toji set down the files and picked up the phone. She squeezed the receiver between her face and shoulder, then dialed a certain number. Toji interrupted the familiar voice. You didn't even realize? Shugo hadn't exactly been the pinnacle of virtue himself back in those days, but Toji decided to cut him a break and not get into that. Her eyes are just like mine. Great. Listening to him gush about his family was doing a real number on Toji's sanity. People running Senri back then hadn't been all that fanatical about collecting funds. Thus, the money might have found its way to the Blessed Congregation. She hoped to link him to the clinical trials, but unfortunately... A spell-like ritual from his hometown, huh? And if he's a Shigasa, that means his hometown is Hitogata. And I'm guessing this Michio, right, is the disgraced brother that no one wants to talk about, right? It's like, oh, we don't talk about him, right? Okay. And a spell-like ritual. Interesting. Okay. Toji realized too late the minefield she stepped into. Toji hung up the phone and made some coffee for a change of pace. The beans were from Moonworld, the cafe Reiji had introduced her to not too long ago. Hell yeah. We love to see everyone supporting Moonworld. Almost out. Yeah, she should get some more before the year's over. Toji sipped from her cup with those thoughts in mind. She savored the rich flavors she poured over her documents. A spell like ritual, huh? Senri used to have something like that too. It was all just a bunch of BS though. Toji spotted the word Shigasa Shrine in one of her documents. It was the name of Michio Shigasa's birthplace, a shrine in Toyama. Yep. Toji noticed the shrine's location. Hitogata, West Tanami District, Toyama Ward. She couldn't help but click her tongue. Isn't that where Reiji and that clown are headed? Yep. Do I finally... Oh yeah, we're jumping back 2 days. Alright. Let's see what mess Reiji and Masuki got into. Masuki and I arrived at our destination a full day after departing from Tokyo. We got off the last bus of the day and found ourselves in a realm dominated by darkness. Masuki picked up his bag. That inspector's still here, huh? God damn. Because, like, how many years has it been since he ran away from Hitogata? It's been several. It's been like 12, right? Because he came home in 45. If I remember, because I did all the math in the last recording session, I'm pretty sure he came home in 45. 1945 was when he came home from the war. And he was only there for a few days before everything went down with Sai at the shrine. And it's currently 1957. Yeah, 12, because he'd be 30. Yeah, no, that adds up. Because he'd be 30 now, and he was 18 when he ran away. And he was 13 during the initial flashback. Yeah. So it's been 12 years since Ayato ran away from Hitogata. And even then, Inui was still there 5 years after the initial incident, right? But even then, Inui was saying like, oh, like the trail's gone cold. They want to completely wrap up the case and, you know, cut it off. But now here we are, 12 years after Ayato left, 17 years after the initial incident, and Inui is still here? I feel like there's something more at play here, right? Because, like, when the first instance of the curse had happened, shortly before the death of Ayato's mother, Inui had initially investigated that, but from what we can tell, he didn't stick around like he did this time, right? I think there was like, what, 10 years or so, maybe a bit more, between the two incidents. And like, it was after this most recent one in 45 that he popped back up again. But here we are 12 years after 17 years, I mean, after the initial incident, and he's still like regularly staying in Hitogata. Like, I understand he wants to track down the culprit, right? But that's what he would have wanted the first time around too. So now is he just so obsessed with the case that he refuses to go anywhere else? That he refuses to leave? He's sitting around just waiting for it to happen again? Though if that's the case, like, you gotta imagine there was, what, 10 or so years? Because I don't remember how old Ayato was when his mother died. I know that Ayato has no memory of his mother, so he was very young. He was 13 in the initial flashback, which means at the most, we're looking at, even if his mother died shortly after giving birth, at most that's 13 years. At most that's 13 years between the incidents. I know at one point they did give us the actual date for it, the actual year anyway. But at the most it was 13 years, and now it's already been 17 years since the second incident, the one that, essentially drove Ayato away. And Inui's still hanging around. It's been longer between the incident and the second incident than the second incident and today. Yet Inui's still hanging around. I don't know. I feel like that's suspicious. Because I feel like they said that after the first incident of the curse, that Inui stuck around for a bit, but eventually he stopped showing up altogether. And maybe that was related to the war, mayhaps. I'm not too sure, but possibly. But now, like I said, 17 years later, and he's still popping up. He's still showing up. He still hasn't just faded away and fucked off to something else. He's still here. Still doing something. And that, I don't know, that raises some eyebrows for me. I pointed to a building adorned with red lights. Yeah, imagine. Muskie briskly marched onward. I simply shrugged and followed suit. I slowly followed Muskie while taking care not to trip. We hadn't been walking very long, yet my shoes were already soaked inside and out. I felt the urge to pelt him with a snowball. Not out of moral principle, mind you, but because my fingers were so numb with cold I didn't want to release them from the worn confines of my pockets. Muskie eventually stopped outside a large building. I looked up to see a giant thatched roof smothered in snow and a sign above the entrance reading, Hutami Inn. Muskie took a step back and cleared the snow for me. It's probably best that I did the talking, seeing as how he was trying to be incognito. Though honestly, I really wasn't confident we could pull that off. Yeah, no, I don't know how long that's gonna last. How long they're gonna be like, oh, is that? Oh no, this is my partner, Tomiyuki Muskie. All right, I don't know who you think it is, but no, that's. People are like, no, that's Ayato. I brushed the snow off my coat and stepped through the door. It wasn't long before an old woman hobbled over from within. She pointed at the front desk, flipped through the pages and did as she asked. While I was at it, I wrote Masaki's name down as well. The old woman snorted condescendingly. Not gonna show us to it, huh? For an innkeeper, this lady wasn't exactly the picture of hospitality. In any case, I reluctantly took off my shoes and stepped up to the wooden floor. Muskie trailed behind me, silent as a ghost. He avoided the old woman's gaze, probably because he was afraid she'd see right through him. That only served to make him look more suspicious. The woman left us with that short farewell. I set my bag down, relieved to finally have a place to take a load off for the first time in a day. While I was at it, I removed my socks so they could dry. Oh look, sarcasm. Here I thought I'd get a vacation from Yaginima's most loyal companion. I retorted tit for tat as I massaged my toes. That probably worked better for me anyway. The Hinagamis and Shigasas ran Hitagata.
事件の時に何か思わなかったのか？
Held my hands over the brazier.
新聞でちらっと見ただけですから、そんな詳しいことまでわかりませんでしたよ。
That checked out. Besides, it wasn't like Michio Shigusa had been the ringleader of the Senri incident anyhow.
千里教の設立に仕草神社は関係していたのか？
仕草家じゃ長男のことは禁忌とされていたようですし、失踪したと言われてましたから、勝手にやったことなんじゃないですか？
It seemed I'd have to ask the Shigasas about him then. Not that I planned on being so upfront, of course.
失礼します。
A voice called out to us from the hallway. Masuki visibly
何で
tense.
しょうか？
He gestured Masuki over to the back of the room before opening the door.
失礼いたします。
Standing there was a woman dressed like a hostess, bowing.
二見優と申します。本日は当旅館にお越しいただき、
She entered the room and bowed again. I snuck a peek at Masuki while she was distracted. He was keeping his head low. His Yu looked about his age, so maybe they'd been friends.
お食事の方はいかがなされますか？
軽く頼もうかな。まさきもそれでいいな。
ええ。
かしこまりました。では少々お待ちくださいませ。
Yu left the room. Masuki took a deep breath.
知り合いのようだな。
ええ。気づいている様子はありましたか？
さすがにわからねえよ。
That said, I highly doubted she'd unmask him after such a brief interaction. She seemed too polite to poke her nose into customers' business, at least. Or perhaps she simply hadn't wanted to get involved with a couple of sketchy characters from Tokyo. Though who's to say if that would change?
失礼いたします。
Yu returned.
お食事はこちらにお持ちいたします。
勘をつけてくれるかな。それと、
何でしょうか？
Her voice was guarded. No surprise
こ
there.
の集落のことについてなんだ。
Though I wasn't sure how much, if anything, I could get out of her, decided to push forward regardless.
お客様は東京からいらっしゃったそうですが。
I hesitated for a moment. Though she wasn't right, she wasn't exactly wrong either. Especially since we were here on their
な
behalf.
ぜそう思われたのですか？
それは
Now it was her turn to hesitate.
東京で親友が亡くなったと聞きました。
Yu's voice dropped several decibels.
それの巡りの調査でいらっしゃったのではありませんか？
まあそんなところです。
I answered ambiguously while all but saying yes.
やはり
Yu glanced at Masuki for a
その
second.
ことについていくつか尋ねたいことがあるのですが。
I had to keep her attention off Masuki.
私にわかることでしたら何なりとお申し付けください。
Yu bowed her
ありがと
head.
う。では、直接の関係は薄いと思われますが。
それは構いませんが。
Yu glanced behind her, scanning the inn's hallway. Looked like she was being cautious of any prying eyes or ears.
どうぞ。
現在、この集落が何か問題を抱えていたりはしませんか？
I felt my own voice lowering to nearly a whisper.
問題とは
Yu shot Masuki another look after getting that out of the way.
失踪していたひな神家の長男が見つかったという知らせがあったそうで。
She's totally onto us, isn't she? Her explanation had left so much out that it wouldn't have been the least bit helpful to anyone new in town. It seems she believed that we had at least a fairly decent understanding of how things worked around here.
ひな神家というのは？
And so I tried playing dumb.
この集落の有力者です。そういったことも調べられているかと思いましたが。
She told Masuki another
失
glance.
礼。大まかなところは存じていますが、何分近年のここの情勢については分かりませんでしたから。
I intentionally threw out the recent years bit.
そうでしょうね。
You sighed.
ひな神家の跡継ぎが見つかったということで、婚礼の準備なども進められていたそうです。
候補というからには他にもいらっしゃったのですか？
I distracted you with another question.
So
Ah, shit. I accidentally
keeping
pressed the
us-
button. Before she turned her attention to Masuki. You hung her head. I snuck another peek at Masuki. He too was staring at the floor, not so much as budging an inch.
お食事お持ちいたしますので。
ええ、申し訳ありません。
いえ。
You rose to her
申
feet.
し訳ありませんが、ここで見聞きしたことは内密にしていただいても構いませんか？
I highly doubted anyone would blab, but better safe than sorry.
かしこまりました。それでは。
You left the room. Muskie let out the mother of all sighs.
随分と賢しい人のようだな。
いつも本を読んでいましたからね。
お前のことも感づいていたようだ。内密にと約束してくれたから心配はないと思うが。
Still, we clearly couldn't keep this charade up forever either. It would probably be for the best to have Muskie stay at the inn as much as possible. Though that was a problem for another day.
うまい飯を食うのが先だな。
時坂さんって本当にずぶといですよね。
And here I thought I'd escape from all the sass in my life. What happened the next day?
じゃあ俺は駐在に行ってくるから、お前はここでおとなしくしていろよ。
わかってますよ。
So I'm gonna guess that while Reiji's out investigating the police station and the Hinagamis, Yu's gonna come back and try to have a little chit-chat with Masaki. That or someone is, right? Because someone like Ayato, like, that's not just gonna fly under the radar. A lot of people are gonna know he's here, right? So they're gonna know that he's at the inn. Reiji's gonna leave to do his business, but then someone else is gonna come in and be like, "We found you, boy." I picked up my bag, donned my coat, and left Masaki in the room behind me. It was colder than the depths of hell, courtesy of a splendid winter morning in the mountains. The floor was still chilly despite the thick socks snug around my feet. I sniffled, getting a flood of cold air to my nostrils for the trouble. I hadn't even stepped outside yet. I'd seriously underestimated Hokurika's winters. I was wishing I'd packed more layers like Yukari had suggested.
どちらへ?
The proprietress, Yishie Futami, emerged from the back.
散歩ですよ。初めて訪れた地では。
よそ者はうろつかん方がいい。
She shook her head. Maybe I should have just been honest about going to the station. It wasn't like they'd be welcoming of outsiders on their way.
それは困りましたね。
I knew it was risky, but I brought up Inui's name to gauge her response. Would she yield to authority, or would she try to kick me out? Ultimately, it seemed the police still had some power in these parts, as Yoshe simply got out of my way, the scrunkled curl of her lips never leaving her face.
お連れさんは?
彼は気分が悪いそうで伏せっています。そうひどくもないようなので。
そうかい。
I passed her by and stepped into my shoes, still sitting on the concrete floor right where I'd left them. The tips were frozen, and she said they would dry overnight too. Unfortunately, Yoshie was gone before I could even complain. I sighed and rose to my feet. It probably thawed in good time. I hope my skin wouldn't get all chapped. Once outside, I began strolling around the settlement. Though that said, all I really did was go back the way I'd come it the previous night. Since I was an outsider, I knew it'd be for the best if I didn't make any suspicious moves until I had more info and the settlers learned of my presence. Thus, I figured I'd pay a visit to the police station near the entrance of the settlement first. Made my way over as I trod across roads covered in thin blankets of virgin snow all the while. Eventually I found my way there. By then, my toes were so cold that I feared they'd break right off. I slid open the door and walked right in. The warmth of the heater in the center of the room instantly washed over me.
あれ? どちらさん?
God damn, boy! Nah, alright, I see you. Those glasses help you out a lot. Nah, now you look like you got some pull, boy. Like, he was starting to get a little bit of facial hair, right, when we saw him after Ayato came back from the war. But, you know, now his facial hair is a lot thicker. He's got them glasses on. Nah, I see you, man. A cop a bit older than me, probably in his early 40s, looked up from his chair in the corner of the room.
失礼。東京から来た時坂と言いますが、乾警部はどちらですか?
I introduced myself to the cop and got straight down to business.
え? 東京?
The cop shrieked and bolted to his feet.
失礼いたしました。自分は高山忍巡査であります。この度は遠路はるばるご苦労様です。八木沼警視殿。
いや、自分は八木沼とは。
I just felt awkward with this guy saluting me as respectfully as I did my superiors back during the war.
あれ? じゃあどちらさんで?
八木沼警視の紹介でこちらに来た探偵の時坂と言います。
ああ、そうでしたか。
Takayama lowered his arm and sank back into his chair.
二人で来るということでしたが、もう一人が八木沼警視ですか？
いや、自分の助手です。今は気分が悪いそうで。
なんだ。
Takayama slowly got back up, his voice laden with unvarnished disappointment.
乾さんを呼んできますんで、ここでしばらく待っていてください。
Takayama disappeared into the back of the station. I plopped down onto a nearby chair and brought my feet to the heater. Honestly, I would have loved nothing more than take off my shoes, but that would have been beyond rude. And so I settled for letting the heat dry my shoes instead. Worked like a charm, seeing as how I'd brought my feet a literal hair's breadth away from the heater. Though honestly, my toes getting itchy in exchange wasn't the best trade. Tried wriggling them to distract myself, but the itchiness was driving me mad. Got so bad that I was just about ready to throw caution to the wind and take off my shoes when Takayama suddenly returned with an elderly man.
乾警部ですね。自分は東京から来た。
Yeah, let's see how much older Inui looks, cause like, yeah, a whole decade plus has passed without seeing him.
君の自己紹介に興味はない。必要なのは事件の情報だ。
God damn, boy. Yeah, you've definitely aged. Inui held out his hand and took a seat in the chair Takayama had been occupying when I'd arrived.
君も無駄話をするために来たわけではなかろう。
In order to tell, I'll have plenty of headaches in my future with this guy around. But he kept things moving along solely at his tempo was going to be tricky to handle, that much was sure.
高宮めぐりはどのように殺されていたのかね。
Inui wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter.
どのようにですか。
Okay, well, I guess that is something to consider. I was judging like, why is Inui still here after all this time? But then when you consider the rise, the sudden murders in Tokyo at the clay doll, of course Inui would come back to Hitogata where that originated, right? So I guess that would make sense. And that's why he's still here. That's why he's here now, back on the case, because he knows like this is the origin point. This is where it all started, right? How much does he know? Does his interest in the killer's MO mean he knows something about the clay doll as well?
高宮めぐりさんが宿泊先のホテルで殺害されたことは聞き及んでいるでしょうが。
I took the photo of the clay doll out of my bag and showed it to Inui.
たたりか？
ご存知なのですね。
Inui had visibly reacted to the photo. Did that mean the clay doll really had originated in this region?
犯人の目星は？
Inui ignored me and asked his own question.
それはまだ掴んでいません。こちらに何らかの手がかりがあると踏んできたのですが。
たたりについては知っているかね？
ある程度のことは。高宮めぐりさんが東京でたたりに会うことが不自然だとわかるくらいですが。
なぜ不自然だと思うのかね？
I was supposed to have been interviewing him. He was the one asking all the questions.
願物のヒンナ様を祀ることがたたりに合う条件ならば、腹に詰められていた土人形はその願物のはずでしょう。
随分とお詳しいようだ。
Though Inui sounded as stoic as ever, his eyes were boring straight through
こ
me.
の集落出身の知り合いがいましてね。
I determined to be for the best if I kept my silence on Masaki.
土人形については模倣犯が現れても厄介なので。
そうなのですか？
I played dumb. Since Masaki hadn't known the clay doll was supposed to be Lord Hina, that probably meant he hadn't been informed either. Then how had Nanako Sawashiro known? Because she's the one who discovered it.
沢城奈々子という女性をご存知ですか？
こちらで起こった事件の第一発見者だ。
Inui answered in a
つまり
flash.
その事件も
たたりなんてものは存在せんよ。
同感です。
It seemed the two of us were of one mind on that matter, at least.
そちらの事件について詳しくお話を伺いたいのですが、確か亡くなられたのは川瀬さんという方でしたね。
とうの昔に時効になっているよ。
その割には随分とご執心のようですが。
Inui glared at me.
控訴できずとも犯人を見つけなくてはならない。
それは警官の考え方じゃありませんよ。
官職の平刑事などそんなものだ。
It made sense that he'd been thrown to the wayside if he was still snooping around crime scenes, despite holding the rank of inspector. He didn't seem like the kind of person his peers would know what to do with, that much was sure.
この集落でたたりと呼ばれている事件は過去何度も起こっている。
それから十数年。
たたりと呼ばれるものはな。もっともたたりは十数年おきに起こっている。川瀬幸子の前は昭和4年に財前恵子が同様に殺されている。
その前は
大正11年の3月に1件。
同一犯とも思えませんね。すべて土人形があったのですか？
そういうことになる。
Like the one Ayato Hinagami committed. Not that I dare take the bait by asking, though.
犯人は同一の思想を持った連中だろう。たたりの噂を流した連中か。
目星はついているようですね。
長いこと調べていれば被疑者の一人や二人は浮かんでくる。
I waited a few seconds, but it sounded like he intended to elaborate. Still, it wasn't impossible to guess who he had in mind when I considered the information Masuki had provided me. Though honestly, I couldn't tell whether he hadn't made a move against them because they couldn't be tried or if he simply didn't have enough evidence.
そういえば失踪していたひな神家の長男が発見されたと聞きましたが。
I shifted the topic to Matsuki, knowing I was treading on very thin ice.
さてね、彼がいなくなったことに事件性はない。
Is he feigning ignorance?
東京で見つかったのならば、君が自分で話を聞くべきではないのかね。
機会に恵まれませんでしたから。失踪したきっかけなどはご存知ではありませんか？
さて、警察には何も上がってきてはいなかったな。
Sayashigesa's murder should have tripped plenty of red flags, yet he didn't say a word about it. Is he playing dumb? Was Masuki lying? Or maybe he really doesn't know. He was most likely just being wary because I was an outsider, but it was honestly hard to say for sure. I mean, he's just as much of an outsider. Yeah, I guess he's been staying in this village a lot longer, sure, but like, the people regard him as just as much of an outsider as they do Reiji. Whatever the case, I sense I wouldn't be getting anything else out of him.
これから自分は少しこの集落を
好きにするといい。しかし、よそ者はそれだけで敵外心を持って見られるから。
Was that his way of saying he didn't think I was going to get any info out of them?
こちらの身分にお墨付きを与えてくれればいいのですが。
Shot a look at Officer Takayama, who had been sitting quietly in the corner all this time.
自分にそんな権限はありませんよ。
住民から通報があった場合に説明していただけるだけで構いませんから。
はあ、そのくらいでいいのでしたら。
Settlement's safety is in the hands of this clown.
では、よろしくお願いします。
I bowed and rose from my chair. My shoes seemed to have fully dried, fortunately. With nothing to do, Masuki just lay around in the room after Reiji had left. The latter had warned him to stay put, but it wasn't like he'd been planning to go out in the first place. He would have been a total idiot to do so, since he risked being recognized by old acquaintances. Why did I even come back to begin with if I was going to stay cooped up in this room the whole time? I wondered whether wearing glasses would have been enough of a disguise, but unfortunately neither he nor Reiji had any. I should ask Tokisaka about our future plans once he gets back. However, just as that thought crossed Masuki's mind, the door slid open, revealing an elderly woman.
Ayato-san.
Yep, I kind of figured. Someone was going to find out he was here. That's his grandmother, isn't it? Yeah. Mariko? I'm pretty sure. It might be one of the Shigesas, but I'm pretty sure that's his grandmother. Yeah, it was Marika Hinagami, his grandmother. Her hair was whiter and she had far more wrinkles since he'd seen her last, but he could never have mistaken his own grandmother. Which meant the reverse held true as well.
間違いありませんか?
Yoshie, who'd accompanied Mariko to the room, turned toward her.
ええ、そのようですね。
Masuki couldn't refute her accusation by claiming he was a simple doppelganger. Not when faced with his own grandmother. That was the greatest proof of all just how unforgiving the Hinagami family hierarchy was.
立ちなさい。
Overwhelmed, Masuki followed her orders. His grandmother felt a lot smaller than he'd remembered. Yet she hadn't lost so much of a speck of her commanding presence.
帰りますよ。
She wasn't scolding him. Despite that, Masuki, Ayato Hinagami, couldn't say no to her. You stupid fuck. I mean, that's entirely what I expected, but God, I didn't expect him to go quietly. I fully expected them to kidnap his ass. But no, she just walks in like, Ayato, come home. And he's like, okay, yes, ma'am. You stupid bastard. Masuki silently followed Mariko back to the Hinagami estate. And changed at all over the last decade.
お帰りなさいませ、大奥さん。
Yuka, who'd been sweeping snow out front, gaped with eyes wide as saucers the moment she saw Masaki's face.
綾人様。
Masaki looked away without saying a word.
ゆか、綾人さんの足を洗って差し上げなさい。
かしこまりました。
Madoka proceeded into the house without uttering another word.
綾人様。
Yuka softly tugged Masaki's sleeve. Knowing he had no choice but to go along, Masaki obediently followed Yuka. No, you got a choice. You definitely got a choice. You may be like, resistance is futile, they'll get me either way. God damn, at least put up a fight, kid. He sat at the entryway pit that was just before the living room proper.
裾をまくってくださいね。
Yuka brought a basin over to the pit.
ゆかさん。
はい。
Yuka looked up as she filled the basin with hot water.
ただいま。
You can now honestly admit that to her, perhaps since Madoka was gone.
お帰りなさいませ、綾人様。
Yuka wiped her
自
eyes.
分がいなくなってからのことを聞かせてくれないか。
それは後ほど大奥様がお話になると思います。
Yeah, but I'd rather hear it from you, someone who's gonna
足
like
をこちらへ。
give me the facts and not whatever sugar-coated bullshit the matriarch wants to give me. Masaki did as he was asked. Though the water wasn't scalding hot, he still felt something akin to pain in his toes. However, it wasn't long before that gave way to a sensation much like a warm, comfortable blanket swathing his foot.
大旦那様がお倒れになりました。
Fuck him. Yuka suddenly brought that up as she washed Masaki's foot.
いつ？
もう5年も前のことです。
Masaki couldn't even picture his stern grandfather showing weakness.
家のことは大奥様が取り仕切っておられますし、会社は旦那様が引き継がれておりますから影響は少ないのですが。
それで俺を見つけるや否や結婚の話が出てきたのか。
だと思います。でもめぐりさんが亡くなっ
Yuka stopped what she was doing.
反対の足をどうぞ。
ああ。
She began scrubbing Masaki's foot dry as soon as he removed it from the hot water.
でもこうして綾人様が帰ってこられて。
Yeah, don't get too excited. No, Miss Kiramura, I haven't come home. Not at all. Tameki Masaki didn't belong here. Ayato Hinagami died over a decade ago. That was why he hated himself for enjoying this. The stench of medicine overpowered Masaki's senses as soon as the door slid open. His grandfather was resting in a futon.
綾人か。
His voice sounded extremely hoarse. He was like a totally different person than the dour man Masaki had grown up with. Oh, wow. Oh, he sat up with the help of his wife. I was just gonna say, doesn't seem in that poor of a help if he just immediately just shoots up and you're just like, oh, okay. Though he'd been reduced to naught but skin and bones, his eyes hadn't lost their sagacity. He sternly looked at his grandson head
ご
on.
無沙汰しています。
That was all he could think to say.
ひな神を継ぐということを
You
自
can
覚し
suck my
ろ。
fucking destiny, you old prick. His rebuke lacked any steel. That was the only reason Masaki had found himself able to ask questions of his
結
own.
婚の話を進めていたのは誰ですか？
すべてしずるに任せてある。
Let me at him.
嫁選びも
Let me at
何
him.
もかも
I'll
な。
fucking throw hands with him. Let me at him. Actually, that's probably not the best idea. Shizura could probably kick his ass. Well, I mean, Ayato did go to war, alright? He learned, he had to have learned something, right? Ayato might be able to scrap a little bit. Idiomu's voice was utterly apathetic.
わしももう長くない。くたばる前に決まってほしかった。
He heaved a lengthy sigh.
退出なさい。
Masaki bowed and did as his grandmother asked. Felt warmer than it did earlier by the time I left the police station. Decided to cautiously take a walk through the settlement while picking the paths with the least snow. Eventually arrived at a crossroads in what appeared to be the center of Hitogata. That said, there weren't any cars there, just a large area that had been cleared of snow. Ahead of me was a mountain, along with a path that led up to it. Shika's shrine was probably at the top. To the left was a Western-style building that totally clashed with the settlement's aesthetic. Guess I should check it out. I approached the place in question and found a sign near the front door that read Kuroya Clinic. Made sense why I looked the way it did in that case. The path to the entrance had also been thoroughly shoveled. Great care clearly taken to ensure no one slipped. Suddenly the door opened, revealing a middle-aged man. Oh! Oh no! Oh, Yuzuru, shave that shit off, dude. Oh, ew! 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 No! No! Brother, you were the attractive one. You were the attractive one. And all that just thrown out the window because what? You wanted to fucking throw on a stash? Ew. That hair's not doing you any service either. That hairstyle? I don't know how much different it is. Maybe it's just that hairstyle combined with the mustache, but nah. When we saw the initial flashbacks, I get it, he's aged, right? It's been 17 years. Well, no, it's been 12 years since we last saw him. I get that he's aged a bit, but that mustache, that hair, brother, you lost the sauce. You lost the sauce. You look like a B-list 70s porn actor. Homie, you lost the sauce. You had so much sauce. You truly did. I looked at you, I'm like, yeah. Between the two brothers, you're the real looker there, right? Clearly Shizuru was like the jockish type, who was just like all very confident, very muscular, could pull all the bitches he wants, sure. But this dude had the real looks. And all that out the fucking window. All of it just fucking gone. Did you dye your hair, or was it always that dark? I'm curious, actually. Because I know Shizuru had lighter hair. Was your hair always that dark? I know So had darker hair. I don't know. I don't fucking like that, though. I don't fucking like that, though. Fucking gross.
こちらの先生ですか。自分は東京から来た時坂と言いますが。
わざわざ東京から何をしにいらっしゃったのかな。
He appeared cautious of me. Luckily, I remembered what Chizuru had given me before I set out on my trip.
失礼ですが、黒谷さんですよね。東京の朽木さんのご親戚でいらっしゃる。
ああ、そうだな。
朽木千鶴さんから手紙をお預かりしています。
ゆずるは自分だが、千鶴さんか。
I took the letter out of my bag and handed it to Yuzuru.
ああ、中へどうぞ。
It seemed to have done the trick, since the next thing I knew, he was beckoning me into the clinic.